A earth-shattering crash shattered the silence of the night. The entire corrugated iron roof and the purlins of the Appalachian Diner collapsed right before my eyes. Soot, ash, and charred wall fragments from the past swirled into the air, making me choke and cough. But the most horrifying thing lay within that collapsed void. Amidst the smoke and dust, slimy, ink-black tentacles as thick as an adult's thigh were flailing and whipping frantically through the air. One tentacle grazed my shoulder, bringing with it the rancid, putrid stench of a long-decomposed corpse. Instinct for survival kicked in. Without a second thought, I turned and bolted toward the main entrance. I threw my entire weight against the glass door, bursting it open as the wind chimes above shattered and crashed to the floor. I ran like mad toward the parking lot, where the outdoor fog had grown even thicker than before, so dense it felt suffocating. I leaped into the cabin of my Ford Ranger, my hands shaking violently as I jammed the key into the ignition. Thutter, sputter, click, click. The engine groaned, sputtered to life, and then died. I slammed my hand against the steering wheel, screaming in utter helplessness, "Please!" Start! Through the rearview mirror covered in raindrops, a colossal dark silhouette with spindly, spider-like legs was slowly crawling out of the diner's ruins, heading straight for me. There was no time to lose. I flung the truck door open, left everything behind, and plunged headlong into the pitch-black pine forest by the roadside. I ran without daring to look back even once. The thudding of my own footsteps against the blanket of dry pine needles sounded like the urgent bidding of the Grim Reaper. The Appalachian forest at night was like a maze with no escape. Towering, dark, ancient pine trees stood shoulder to shoulder, their interlocking branches completely blotting out what little light remained of the night sky. The fog crept through the trees, wrapping tightly around my legs as if trying to drag me deep into the mire. With every gasp of air, the freezing cold rushed into my lungs, stinging like needles. Sharp, dry twigs swiped across my face, leaving faint streaks of fresh blood, and briars tore at the hem of my jeans, but I felt no pain. My mind was a complete blank, driven by a single, absolute command: run. Run as far away from this cursed town as possible. I had no idea how long or in what direction I had been running until my breath became ragged and my chest throbbed as if it were about to burst. I collapsed to my knees beside a massive tree trunk, my entire body trembling violently as I strained to listen, searching for any sign that the monstrous thing was pursuing me. There was no sound. The forest was terrifyingly quiet, a dead, suffocating silence. After spending a few minutes gasping for air to regain my composure, I pulled my phone out of my jacket pocket. The screen still displayed no service, but fortunately, the flashlight was still working. I switched it on, its bluish-white beam cutting through the thick fog. I swept the light across the ground to find my bearings. Right at my feet, half hidden beneath wild grass that grew past my knees, were large wooden beams laid parallel to each other. I brushed the grass aside. It was an old railroad track. The wooden ties had rotted away, covered in a thick, damp layer of moss. The two metal rails, stretching far into the heart of the mountain, were severely rusted, turned a reddish-brown by the passage of time. My mind suddenly flashed back to the old archival documents about this region from my time at the editorial office. This had to be the internal coal transport line of the Blackwood Mining Company. It had been permanently abandoned following the tragic fire of 1982, where hundreds of miners were buried alive underground. This line ran right through the valley to the main highway. By following these tracks, at least I wouldn't lose my way or plunge off a cliff. Taking a deep breath, I trailed the wooden ties, taking each step with utmost caution. The suffocating stillness around me began to play tricks on my mind. Every rustle of a leaf, every hiss of the wind through the rocky crevices made me jump out of my skin. I had been walking for about 15 minutes when the fog abruptly shifted. It was no longer drifting loosely but had turned thick and dense like a wall of milk, swallowing my vision until I could see barely a meter ahead. I had to hold my hand out in front of my face just to orient myself. Suddenly, from the other side of the valley, hidden behind the mountain ridge, a sound ripped through the air. Toot, toot, that sound. I could never mistake it. It was the low, mournful wail of a steam train's air whistle from the turn of the last century. It echoed in isolation, lingering before fading away into the dead of night. I froze dead in my tracks, goosebumps breaking out all over my body. How could a train possibly be running on tracks that had been broken and rusted for over 40 years? I tried to reassure myself, no, it must just be the wind howling through the caves. That's it, just the wind. But deep down, I knew I was lying to myself. My own lie was shattered instantly. The soles of my feet began to register a faint vibration. The rotting wooden ties beneath me groaned softly. I looked down. Small pebbles along both sides of the tracks were bouncing gently, clacking against one another in a steady rhythm. Chugga-chugga, chugga-chugga, chugga-chugga. The heavy thrum of a mechanical engine and the screech of steel pistons driving the wheels against the rails grew louder and closer by the second. That thing was hurtling toward me from behind that dense wall of fog. It was moving fast. At the same time, the fog around me ceased to be grayish-white. From the far end of the tracks, a murky, blood-red light began to dye the entire misty sky, billowing toward me like a firestorm tearing through the forest. Sheer, unadulterated terror snapped me back to reality. I killed the flashlight on my phone, dove behind a massive pine tree a few meters from the tracks, and threw myself flat against the dry leaves, holding my breath. Just seconds later, the iron and steel monster burst out of the red mist. It was a colossal, ancient steam locomotive, but it wasn't powered by conventional coal or oil. The train's entire steel hull was coated in a pitch-black, slimy fluid that simmered and smoked, the exact same foul liquid that had dripped from the diner's ceiling. From the massive smokestack atop the engine, instead of grey smoke, it spewed billowing plumes of fiery red mist, thick with the stench of burning flesh and sulfur, forcing me to clamp my hand over my nose to keep from gagging. The train had no headlight, yet from the gaps and fissures in the locomotive's rusted iron body, that eerie red light projected outward, sweeping across the rows of trees like a pair of demonic eyes hunting for an intruder. Its engine roared, but it didn't sound mechanical. It sounded like the muffled, agonizing screams of hundreds of souls being tortured in the depths of hell. The screech of steel wheels grinding against the rails wailed piercingly as the train began to slow down, slowly coasting right past my hiding spot. As the rotting wooden passenger cars glided by, a fatal curiosity compelled me to lift my head and look. The fiery red light radiating from inside the cars clearly illuminated the scene within. The windows were caked in pitch-black soot, partially obscuring the view. But behind that glass were people. No, they weren't living people. They were hundreds of charred, blackened corpses, their flesh shriveled and cracked open to reveal the white bone beneath. They stood shoulder to shoulder, packed so tightly together that there wasn't a single gap, as if they had been crammed into the space. As the train slowed to a crawl, something horrifying happened. All at once, every single one of those charred corpses snapped their necks, twisting their heads sharply toward the tree where I lay hiding. They pressed their skinless faces, their eyes nothing but two hollow, smoking black sockets, flat against the window glass. Their skeletal, carbonized hands clawed frantically at the panes, producing a soul-shredding, screeching scratch. They saw me. The blood in my veins turned to ice. I couldn't move, I couldn't scream. And then, at the very last car, a face pressed against the glass made my heart skip a beat. It was the old man, the owner of the Appalachian Diner from earlier. Half of his face was completely incinerated, exposing the white teeth of his jawbone, while the other half remained a pale, lifeless mask. He raised a trembling arm, pointing a spindly finger directly at the tree where I was hiding. His charred mouth gaped open, as if shouting a silent denunciation to the entire train. He is here. A living one is here. Clang, chug chug thud. The ghost train ground to a sudden, complete halt. The crimson steam hissed violently as it vented from beneath the undercarriage. And then, the wooden doors of the passenger cars began to clatter, throwing themselves wide open on their own. The charred corpses began to step down onto the tracks, advancing straight toward me.